All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, 2 weeks ago, the New York Mets were rolling. The Mets were 45 and 24 at the time, and they had themselves a solid lead over the Philadelphia Phillies for first place in the National League East. And in the process, the Mets were viewed as one of the top teams in baseball. But since then, the Mets have not looked like the same team. We've seen New York drop 13 out of their last 16 games, which includes being swept by a pair of sub 500 teams in the Atlanta Braves and the Pittsburgh Pirates. During this 16-game stretch, the Mets offense has been limited to 2 runs or fewer 9 times. And New York's pitching has not been that much better either, as they've surrendered 7 runs or more in 10 of those contests. And when you put it all together, right now, here in the waning stages of the month of June, you have a Mets team that is simply searching for answers. Now, in their 3 game set this weekend against the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Mets were outscored 30-4 against a club that is currently in the basement of the National League Central. And on Friday night, we saw New York struggle as they were limited to 1 run by a starting pitcher in Mitch Keller, who himself to this point of the season has already lost 10 games. And in actuality, that was just his second win of the season. Okay. So you look at this because you got to wonder because the Mets, prior to going to Pittsburgh, they split their 4 game set at home with the Atlanta Braves. They lost the first two, they won the last two, and you figured, okay, maybe the Mets are starting to get out of their funk. And you would think that a trip to Western Pennsylvania against the lowly Pirates was going to get the Mets right. But instead, the Mets are currently in a worse place than they were when they went to Pittsburgh. We know about the team meeting that the Mets had following their 9-2 loss yesterday against the Pirates. Clearly, it didn't work because the Mets lost today to Pittsburgh 12-1, and after the first inning, New York was down 5-0. It's one of those team meetings are good. Okay, you air out your differences, grown man therapy session, whatever. But I simply just don't feel that there is a sense of urgency from this Mets team right now. And I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. New York, they clearly need to go out there and try to figure this out because when teams play like the Mets have played for the last couple of weeks, when stretches like that continue, that's what gets coaches fired. And it might not be the manager per se for the Mets and Carlos Mendoza, but you might see some assistant coaches being given their pink slips and the Mets simply going in another direction, trying to get a shakeup on this team. The bottom line is this. I talked about the sense of urgency that the Mets need to have. The Mets need to go out there and do something that they haven't done during this stretch. They've got to put up some crooked numbers and put up some crooked numbers on the scoreboard early to put the pressure on the opposing pitching staff. New York has not been doing that. Okay. You look at their lineup. Once you get past Pete Alonso in this lineup, the bottom half has not been hitting. It's been all Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso. And of course, uh, Alonso and Lindor look like they're starting to cool off a little bit from their hot starts. Remember earlier in the season when the Mets were winning and Alonso and Lindor were hitting, and it was kind of like, well, you know what? They're doing this in spite of Juan Soto. Just imagine how good that the Mets lineup is going to be when Juan Soto is hitting. Juan Soto is hitting right now, but nobody else is. Okay, and I think part of the reason for the Mets' issues on offense, I know that they're struggling with runners in scoring position, has been the fact that some of the young guys that they were counting on heading into this season have not been producing. We've seen catcher Francisco Alvarez be sent down to the minors to work on things. You look at Mark Vientos, the third baseman who just came back from injury with the Mets. He has not produced at all this season for New York. And that right there is a big factor of things. You look at this pitching staff. The Mets, for the most part, have had the top ERA in the National League for the bulk of the season. But the injuries to their pitching staff right now, Griffith Canning is done for the season with the Achilles injury. Kodai Senga, as good as he is, he's always a injury question. Okay, we just saw Frankie Montas make his season debut, and he got roughed up today in the loss against Pittsburgh. It was his second start of the season. The Mets are hopeful to get Sean Manaea back in their rotation. But the bottom line is the Mets starters have to go deeper in games, okay? Because the bullpen has been solid, but the bullpen is pitching like they've been taxed so far this season, which they have. David Peterson was looking like an ace for the bulk of the season, but the last couple of starts have not been that case as Peterson has been getting roughed up. At the end of the day, you could look at it from a lot of different aspects. First things first, the ebbs and flows of a 162 game MLB season. And right now, the Mets are ebbing. Okay. There's a lot of ups and downs, there's lots of in betweens, you name it. And the Mets simply have to find a way to get, out of their funk. They have a much needed day off tomorrow, as they definitely want to try to get the ship righted as this, they're heading into the final stretch of the first half of the season before we hit the All-Star break. I cannot harp on it enough. They've got to hit better. They've got to hit with runners in scoring position, and guys have to go out there and produce. Uh, I look at the Mets, it's fixable issues. Okay. It's the small things that can add up to the big things. But like I said before, if this continues, there's going to be some shifting around in New York, I think, because at the end of the day, you can't fire the players. And I don't see the Mets moving on from Carlos Mendoza after their strong season last year. But nonetheless, maybe a shakeup to the coaching staff to get things going. Also, you have to wonder, is there a need for Mets president of baseball operations, David Stearns, to go out there and make a roster move? Possibly. I think the biggest thing for the Mets right now, they maybe have to go out there and get themselves another arm. I don't see them doing it per se because they definitely want to see what they can get from Kodai Senga whenever he comes back, and the same thing with Sean Manaea. You look at the Mets last year; they had a very, very slow start. I think it was in at some point in May they found themselves 11 games under 500 before they picked it up, and of course they were one of the better teams over the second half of the season, and everything simply came together like the perfect storm. And it looked like the Mets were building off of that with their start to this season. And of course, unfortunately for their sake, they've hit a wall right now. The Mets got to get back to doing what they were doing early. They were doing all of the little things. They were moving guys over on base. They were hitting with runners in scoring position. They were driving in runs, and it looks like the Mets can do that once a week. But if you're only able to hit consistently once a week, you're not going to win a lot of games at the major league level. Okay, their pitchers got to go out there and they have to have more command at the plate. There's a lot of nuances and there's a lot of levels of things as far as the Mets go. You look at it right now; they've got a six-game home stretch right now. They are going to host the Milwaukee Brewers starting on Tuesday night, and then of course they've got that three-game set with the New York Yankees this Fourth of July weekend. And the last thing that you want to do if you're the Mets, you definitely don't want to look bad against your crosstown rivals, albeit that the Yankees are trying to fight through their own issues right now as we speak. But with everything, when it's all said and done, as bad as things have been for the Mets, they're only a game and a half out of first place in the NL East, and they still have the top spot for the wild card positions in the National League as well. And you still got more than a half a season left. They have the talent there. Like I said, all teams throughout a season go through a slump. Very rarely are you going to see a situation like we saw with the '98 Yankees once upon a time, where they cruised for the entire season en route to the World Series championship. And I'm not here to say that the Mets are going to win the World Series. Yes, I think they're going to be in contention for it. Don't get me wrong. But nonetheless, they've got to find a way to get back on track. And I think, I talked about guys not hitting with runners in scoring position. I think a lot of it is plate discipline. The Mets have been lacking it. Okay. And again, I think this goes back to them needing to go out there and put up a crooked number early as far as the lineup goes. They need to go out there and set the tone. They haven't been doing that. The same thing could be said with their pitching staff as well. Okay. There's a lot of things here for the Mets. The talent is there. Don't get me wrong. They've got to find a way to figure it out. Um, but right now with this lineup, they're just top heavy with Soto, Lindor, and Alonso. And somebody not named Soto, Lindor, or Alonso has got to come up there and put up some big hits, whether it's a Jeff McNeil, whether it's a Brandon Nimmo, or anybody else. They've got to go out there and step up and make it happen. Um, this was a low point for the Mets over the weekend. All right. You wanted to get the ship righted against a team that you felt that you had the ability to go out there and get the ship righted against. And instead, you looked bad. That's the nicest way to sum it up. The Mets look bad. I mean, anytime that you're outscored by any team in baseball in a 3 game set, 30-4, that means you weren't doing too good. Nonetheless, a team that is the only team that is currently under 500 in the National League Central and the Pirates, and a team that is really looking up against everybody else in the standings in the National League Central. But that's what the Mets were up against this weekend. But nonetheless, New York needs to get back on track. It's soul searching time. Okay. And I'm not here to say, well, their season is on the line, but a season that began with so much promise, the Mets are allowing to possibly let slip from their grips. And I think if this slide that the Mets are on continues, I guarantee you there is going to be a change to the coaching staff in Flushing. But nonetheless, Mets got problems, but they can be fixed. And it's all about how soon will New York be able to fix their problems. At the end of the day, for us as fans and for us that watch, we got to wait and see. TFX, what's going on? You're saying they're starting to choke. Stearns needs to pick the phone and start dialing. Well, he's going to do it at some point. But I think the biggest thing for the pitching staff is they want to see what they get back from Anaya, in my opinion, as well as Kodai Senga when they come back. And then, of course, you've got a guy like Jesse Winker coming back. And then at some point, they're expecting Jose Siri, who they picked up from the Tampa Bay Rays, to return to this lineup as well. But again, like I said before, a guy like Mark Vientos, who had a breakout year last year in 2024. I know that he's working his way back from an injury right now, but even prior to the injury, Vientos did not contribute or hasn't contributed in the way that the Mets expected him to go out there and contribute. And of course, a guy like that hitting behind Pete Alonso and Juan Soto, that really changes the outlook of this lineup. So I really want to see what the Mets are going to do there. So much inconsistency, okay, up and down this lineup. That's been one of the biggest things for New York. And they've got to find a way to get back on track sooner rather than later. They're starting to choke. Yeah. The bottom line is they're just not playing well right now. And when you don't play well, it's a trickle down effect. And there's nothing right now that you could put your finger on to say the Mets are doing that well. They're not doing anything well. Their starting pitching's not good. The bullpen's not good. The lineup's not good. They're not hitting. They're not hitting with guys on base. And honestly, for when it's all said and done, over that 16-game stretch, they should be thankful that they're 3-13 because it actually could have been worse. But nonetheless, they have the talent to turn this around because again, you don't start a season 45-24 um, in Major League Baseball if you're not doing something right and if you're not good enough to do it as well. So the talent is there. The Mets just got to figure this out, and they need to try to do it sooner rather than later. They got 4 series left um, in the first half of the series, or the first half of the season, excuse me. They've got Milwaukee for 3. They got the Yankees for 3 at home this weekend. They're at Baltimore, and then they finish up at Kansas City. So when it's all said and done, all 4 of these teams made the playoffs last year. Milwaukee, after their slow start, they have gotten it going. The Yankees, they've hit a bump themselves, and I think the Yankees are going to get it turned up at some point. The Orioles have been a surprise, as has Kansas City. But nonetheless, if you're New York, if you can try to go 8-4 over your final 12 for the first half of the season, that would put you at 56 and 41 to end the first half. And you're 15 games over 500. It's not a bad spot to be in, but I think the Mets need to roll up their sleeves right now, and they got to try to get ahead of this thing. Just like winning can be infectious, so can losing. Okay, and sometimes you expect to win, sometimes you expect to lose, but nonetheless, when I say expect to lose, it doesn't take much to throw you off of your game with one of those here we go again scenarios. And of course, that's what happened a lot in Pittsburgh over this weekend because the Mets starting pitching wasn't there, and they allowed the Pirates to put up cricket numbers against them early and really, put this lineup behind the eight ball. And of course, what we have seen lately from the Mets lineup is an opposing staff or an opposing team jumps on them early. They have just simply not shown the ability to overcome that. So, of course, if you're a Met opponent right now, like I keep saying, the Mets need to go out there and put up a cricket number. Their opponents are basically saying, hey, you know what? Let's go out there and put up the cricket numbers against the Mets and put them behind the eight ball because they have shown that they can't come back. And I think that is something that the Mets definitely have to fix. And like I said before, all of the issues with the Mets right now are indeed fixable, but they've got to try to find a way to get ahead of this thing. And of course, like I said before, if they don't, I truly do expect some changes to come down at Citi Field for this club. But that's going to wrap it up, folks, on this edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. And as always, if you liked what you heard and saw on this podcast, you know what to do. Please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And if you give me that follow, I'll give you that follow right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And just like it is for the X, you can also follow me on Instagram at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Give me that follow. I'll give you that follow right back. TFX, my man, as always, thank you so much for chiming in. Always appreciate the support. Much love to you. And for everybody else, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.